Good afternoon. This is Channel 1 Lunchtime News. I trust you're having a lovely day so far. Well, we have a comprehensive bulletin lined up for you this afternoon. Remember, this is an interactive segment where you can reach us on our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1 or at Jacky Wambiru. My name is Jacky Wambiru. Our sign language interpreter is Lucy Maura. Now, to kick us off, well, we shall be heading over to the Kenyatta National Hospital, where our reporter Purity Museo is on standby with the National Nurses Association of Kenya President Alfred Abengo, where earlier on the Nurses Association were calling on the county governments to address the plight of health workers. Now, Purity, bring us to speed.
A very good afternoon to you, Jackie. We are here at the National Nurses Association of Kenya offices at the Kenyatta National Hospital, and they were just addressing the media in regard to the ongoing strike by the nurses across the country. And some of the issues that they are raising is the manner in which the nurses' grievances are being addressed by both the union and the Council of Governors, and also the SRC, which is the body that is mandated to ensure that issues such as the salary grievances are looked into. But just before I give you a background on how and when the strike began in the middle of a pandemic, let's speak with the president of this association to just bring us to speed on how they are helping into these negotiations and some of the issues, or let's say some of the problems, the disagreements that are going on to have this prolonged strike by healthcare workers. Thank you so much, Alfred Abengo, for joining us this afternoon. It's been 2 months. In December, strike by medical workers began, and we are facing a pandemic. They are the frontline workers, but no end in sight. You began your statement by talking about the manner in which the strike or the issues are being addressed, and now poking holes into the union and saying some of the way they are dealing with the negotiations is not the way according to the law. Maybe you can tell us what are your concerns as far as the Kenya National Union of Nurses is concerned and how they're addressing this matter.
Thank you, Purity. It is a sad state of affairs that we are in this situation today, especially in the middle of a pandemic. But what has saddened me most as the president of National Nurses Association of Kenya is the way our real issues, insofar as our welfare is concerned, have been masked by political undertones between the COG leadership and also the leadership, section of the leadership within our union, to the extent that we've seen altercation that actually are more or less, you can say, personal. And that is really not bringing out our real issues as they should be on the fore. So we wish to ask the leadership, both the parties, KNUN and the COG, not to mask our issues with their own political, probably, differences, and maybe the politics of Kakamega. So what we are saying is that let our issues, our narrative be about our welfare and our welfare only. Otherwise, if there are other political issues, let them be separated from the issues that the nurses are pushing and the health workers are pushing. So,
all right. Today you are condemning the statement by the Kenya National Union of Nurses, SG, Seth Panyako, on 3rd, where he was angrily trying to address the issues by the nurses and actually welcoming the new leadership of the Council of Governors. Maybe what specific are you calling unethical in how they're addressing these matters?
What I'm bringing forth is not really even condemning someone, but what I'm bringing forth is just reminding the public, reminding our health care professionals, and specifically the nurses and midwives, that we still have a profession and we still have some ethical virtues to observe, even in the midst of an industrial relation process. To the extent that even after this industrial action, we'll still go back and serve our patients. And one of the cardinal duties that we've taken oath to preserve is that we must never divulge confidential information that you are privileged to be in custody of as a nurse or a healthcare professional. We must not do that in public, because that impinges negatively on it also stigmatizes the people that have actually offered you that information. So that one, we still want to remind the public that they should have confidence in us. We still want to remind them that let them still come to us, and that is an isolated incident that must not happen again in this profession, because we are not allowed to divulge our clients' personal details, health details in the public or in the media.
And what the association is saying is that leadership is lacking in negotiating and trying to address the issues by nurses. So how best should they be addressed? It's been 2 months, and patients are really suffering in the public hospitals affected.
The other confusion that has been there, it's more or less to define the role between the national and the county governments as to who are supposed to handle this and who is supposed to handle that. We've seen a situation whereby there was also misunderstanding of the law by various players, that what should have been handled at the county level, you've brought it to Nairobi for maybe the CS Mutai to handle. What should have been handled by probably CS, you've taken it back to your county government to handle. So we need to separate issues that need to be handled at the national government and at the county government level. And most of those issues, if you have looked at them, 99% should have been handled at the county government, because the human resource component, so far as administration of the human resource is concerned in the healthcare industry, is under the county government. So it's let our people be wise enough and explore those avenues that are available insofar as handling their issues within their respective county government.
And lastly, are you in support of the industrial action, and how best should your grievances be addressed?
And the industrial action or any industrial arrest or any strike is supported by the Constitution of Kenya, of which His Excellency the President himself actually took an oath to protect. So the industrial action is there in the Constitution, but it should also be governed by some laws and some regulations. And having said that, we strongly feel that the biggest source of the industrial unrest, the confusion within the healthcare sector, is Salary and Remuneration Commission. Because the Salary and Remuneration Commission has failed to live up to its mandate of actually bringing fairness insofar as remuneration and payment of emoluments is concerned. They were supposed to bridge the disparity, but they are widening that gap even more, because you can't understand how a doctor and a nurse who are attending the same patient, maybe even in theater, they are doing surgery, that a doctor will be paid 20,000 and the nurse will be paid 3,000, and yet the same blood from that patient they're operating, actually all of them are exposed to the risks. So it doesn't, it's quite illogical. So we call upon SRC to live up to their constitutional mandate of bringing fairness and bridging that disparity that we have within the healthcare sector and payment of allowances and emoluments.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Wambiru, I've been speaking with the president, the National Nurses Association of Kenya, and of course in support of the industrial action and the grievances being raised by the nurses across the country, but his concern is on the leadership in the union, the Kenya National Union of Nurses, and saying the way these issues are being addressed, then it's not properly, and therefore citing politicizing of the nurses' issues, the nurses who are having actually what he's saying, that the concerns that should be addressed by the government, the issue has been politicized by both the union and also the Council of Governors. But this week, the union did really express optimism that the new leadership of the COG, led by Embu Governor Martin Wambora, may resolve these issues, and therefore they were responding to the statement by Seth Panyako, the SG of the Union of Nurses, this week, who was maybe mentioning some personalities and trying to, what they are saying, unethically expose their medical situations. So that's it from this end. I'm Purity Museo. Jacky Wambiru, it's back to you in studio.
Well, thank you so much, Purity Museo, for that update on the plight nurses are facing. Now, in other news, as the world marks Cancer Month, a cancer survivor is giving hope to the hopeless. Sarah Muthoni, age 47, is battling 3 killer diseases, among them cancer. The literature teacher at an Nakuru school developed cancer complications after contracting HIV/AIDS and tested positive for COVID-19 after several chemotherapy sessions in hospital, and is determined to positively live every moment of her life.
They say life is for the living, and Sarah Muthoni values each and every moment she breathes. A widow and resident of Nakuru, a teacher at Afraha High School, contracted HIV/AIDS in 1997. 2 years later, Muthoni developed an infection on her back which turned out cancerous. After months, she developed more pain, which prompted her doctors to advise for a surgery. From laboratory results carried out, she was positive for skin and vulvar cancer. During her frequent visits to hospitals for chemotherapy and HIV/AIDS counsel and guiding sessions, she contracted COVID-19. Muthoni describes the journey to her well-being a blessing.
At the time I was diagnosed, it was in 2011, and it manifested itself as warts. One was in the anal opening, the other one at the labia on my right. And initially, just like any other cancer, we didn't first realize it was a cancer. We were thinking, the doctors, I could go to this hospital and I was being diagnosed for hemorrhoids. And that's when one doctor told me that I should go and see a surgeon.
She has managed to overcome stigmatization and managed to secure treatments for the 3 killer diseases.
I went through 27 sessions, and I thought it was gone. Only for it in 2013 to appear at the point at the labia, where the other one was, as pus. It was smelly. So I went back to him. He did another surgery, and the results again came back with the cancer cells. And this time I decided not to take back the results to him because I was so much afraid of chemotherapy. You know, the horrific stories that are out there about chemotherapy.
She now seeks for better facilitation to the cancer treatments by the national government.
You don't just eat any food. You need a balanced diet. Considering that I'm positive with HIV, and I'm also battling with cancer. So you have to be very careful. Like, you know, buying brown rice, a kilogram is 270 now. You can imagine. So you realize much of what you're doing, you have to shelve other things like development.
Irene Mchuma Odim, Channel 1.
Well, that report by Irene Muchimo Odim brings us to our first break here on Channel 1 Lunchtime News. Don't go too far. We'll be right back.
Malaria ni ugonjwa hatari sana unaoua watu wengi hapa Kenya. Japo kuko na korona, hatari ya malaria bado iko. Mtoto huyu alikuwa na joto jingi, kutetemeka, kuumwa na viungo na uchovu. Alikimbizwa hospitali ya umma ambako sheria za COVID-19 huzingatiwa na ni salama kwa shughuli ya upimaji. Vipimo vilionyesha kuwa ana malaria, na papo hapo daktari akampa dawa za malaria na kumshauri azimalize, na ili kujikinga wawe wakilala ndani ya neti iliyotibiwa. Malaria husambazwa na mbu. Walio hatarini ni watoto wa chini ya miaka 5 na akina mama wajawazito. Kupimwa na kutibiwa ni bure katika hospitali zote za umma. Usisahau adui malaria. Zero malaria huanza na mimi. Chukua jukumu leo. Komesha malaria. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na Wizara ya Afya.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Ninyi kalisheni Kamau kidogo, tutaonana siku ingine.
Pengine unaweza kuwa ukijua kwenye Tiffany yako.
Ni Jazz. So tell him I want to talk about Tiffany. And what about me?
Leo ni ile siku ya double kwenye quickbid.co.ke. Tunakupa home theater na fridge.
Kama unataka home theater ni rahisi sana. Enda kwenye lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number ekelea 4032353. 4032353. Account ekelea HT kama kodi ya home theater, fuatanisha na unique number.
Kama unataka fridge wekelea CM ndio kodi ya fridge, kisha fuatanisha na shilingi 20 peke yake. Wekelea pin yako na hivyo ndivyo utakuwa umekelea bid kwenye quickbid.co.ke. Bidhaa bora kwenye bei ya nini?
Chini kwa chini. Chini kwa chini.
Jiunga na Quickbid ni rahisi. Enda kwenye M-Pesa, bonyeza paybill kisha weka business number 4032353. Kwenye account weka kodi ya bidhaa unayotaka na bid yako ya chini zaidi. Kwa mfano TV 16, kisha weka shilingi 20 tu kama idadi yako. Weka bid yako pia kwenye www.quickbid.co.ke. Kumbuka, bid ya chini zaidi ya kipekee ndio hununua. Quickbid, bidhaa bora kwa bei ya chini.
Welcome back. Now moving on, tension is high in Zambani area of Kitui East in Kitui County following killings of 3 people in mysterious circumstances. Kitui Governor Charity Ngilu, who visited the area, complained of police laxity in dealing with the issue and apprehending the criminals.
Tuko na OCPD ambaye hawachungi watu. Niko na report kutoka kwa bodaboda. Vijana wa bodaboda walikuja ofisi yangu wakidemonstrate na walisema wanataka OCPD Nzambani atolewe kwa sababu kila siku anaweka roadblock na anatoa pesa kutoka kwao. Hiyo ndio yeye mwenye vijana walisema. Useme kama mfanyikazi wa watu hajafanya kazi. Ni hivyo. Kwa hivyo mimi nasema naenda kufanya kazi yangu. Kwa sababu nikikosa kufanya hiyo kazi atoke, ndio nyinyi mtanitoa. Si ndio iko namna hiyo? Kwa hivyo na mimi kwa sababu nataka sitaki mtanitoe, ni lazima niende juu chini. Yeye atolewe hapa na sijui atapelekwa wapi.
Now moving on, residents of Mukuru kwa Ruben in Nairobi's Embakasi area are up in arms with the Nairobi Metropolitan Services over what they term as a scheme to grab a parcel of land on which a community-owned school is built. The contentious piece of land was earmarked for the construction of a level 3 hospital by the NMS, but the management of the school is demanding compensation to facilitate continued learning of the students.
Maendeleo Education Sector is a community-owned school serving underprivileged children in Mukuru kwa Ruben in Embakasi area of Nairobi. However, the educational future of the children hangs in the balance as they could lose part of their school compound to pave way for the construction of a level 3 hospital. But the residents and management of the school are reading malice in the move by the Nairobi Metropolitan Services to hive off part of the school compound.
Since 1998 tuje kuwa na shida. Juzi tu mwaka umepita ndio tumekuwa na shida. Wakati ugonjwa imeanza, hakuna mtu alituita tukae chini tuongee kuhusu mambo ya kuweka hospitali hapa. Sisi wakati tulifunga kurudi tunapata hapa pamekatwa imewekwa hospitali.
Ilishangaa sana kuona shule imekatwa na ni shule ya maskini. Hawana baba, hawana mbele. Sisi ushughulika tukiomba chakula ndio mwanafunzi apate chakula. Hawatoi pesa. Tunataka kusaidia Mkenya asome, asonge mbele. Haja yetu si pesa, haja yetu ni mwanafunzi huyu apate elimu akisidishie maishani mwake.
The school management claims attempts to engage NMS through the area member of parliament Julius Mawathe for compensation have borne no fruits.
Hajashughulikia bado. Tulipotoka tukafuatilia sasa ili tuende kwa DCC kwa sababu yeye ndio committee mwenye anasimamia mambo ya mashamba ambayo haina title deeds kama huku. DCC tulipofika tukapata kwa hao walikuwa na mpango already washafika. Mheshimiwa alikuwa amefika na area chief Mr. Nderangu na ACC Embakasi South. Na wakawa wamemake conclusion already, hata wakathreaten wakaambia mama watachukua nini? Watachukua shule yote, wanachukua hiyo shamba, it belongs to the government.
The aggrieved residents are now calling on President Uhuru Kenyatta to intervene in the matter, adding that the school caters to the underprivileged children in the area.
Sisi tunakubali, ni vizuri sana maendeleo na hospitali kuwekwa hapa. Kile tunaomba ni kwamba vile General Mbadi alikuwa hapa mwenyewe akilonji mwezi wa 8 mwaka jana, ni kwamba alisema kwamba watafidia mama mwenye hii shule vyema. Kwa hivyo mama ameona kwamba kuna ukora inaendelea mahali kwa viongozi wa hapa chini. Kwa hivyo sisi kama viongozi tunaomba tu kwamba mama afidiwe, apewe compensation ile iko fair for continuity ya masomo ya hawa watoto ambao wako vulnerable hapa.
Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Wycliffe Okech.
Let's shift gears. Peace actors from Garissa County have been challenged to come on board and contribute to peace and security in the region. Garissa Deputy County Commissioner Bernard Kipori called for more concerted efforts between the government, religious organizations and non-governmental organizations to tackle terror and radicalization in the area.
Speaking after a colorful ceremony to recognize peace actors in Garissa, Deputy County Commissioner Bernard Kipuri said violent extremism has become a threat to life of residents. The administrator further challenged other organizations to come on board and complement government's effort in tackling the menace.
We call upon the donors of this for these organizations to continue funding them because we still have a challenge. This is a very vast region. As you know, the roads are not very good. And so quite a lot of resources are required to ensure that we reach all pockets of the county, to ensure that everybody is reached to be able to tackle issues of terrorism and stuff like that.
The Search for Common Ground Programs Officer Mohammed Haji said the only way to boost the morale of individuals who have contributed to peace and security in the region was recognizing their effort.
The program was trying to do is celebrate individuals that contributed to peace and security.
Katra Hassan Shurie, the chairlady Sharif Group, said that peace was paramount and lack of it affects every aspect of life.
Vita ni mbaya, kama hata Hawaiian mwenyewe anatoroka. Vita ni mzuri kweli? Vita si mzuri. Ile kijana anakufa ni sisi ndio tumesa. Ile bana anakufa ni sisi ndio tumesa. Sisi tunataka amani idumu Kenya yote.
Hundreds of innocent lives have been lost in northeastern region, with terror groups targeting security officers, civil servants and innocent wananchi.
On a separate matter, youth and a section of leaders in Narok County have vowed to slay the dragon of female genital mutilation and early marriages that have become a thorn in the flesh among communities living in the region. Led by Mosiro Ward Member of County Assembly Peter Tirishi, the leaders have revealed such retrogressive cultures have derailed the community's development, particularly in girl-child education.
The fight against female genital mutilation and early marriages in Narok County appears to have gained momentum after the youth and a section of leaders agreed to join hands in efforts to ensure such retrogressive cultures are put on end. The youth who are camping at Mosiro Manyata in Narok East for the ceremonial alternative rite of passage, graduating from childhood to adulthood according to Maasai culture, say they will support the government in the fight against FGM and early marriages.
Sasa hasa sisi wa Maasai tumezingatia zile hali za ndoa za mapema. Wenye wako hapa si watoto wameolewa, ni wamama. Watoto wote wako shule.
Mosiro Ward Member of County Assembly Peter Tirishi urged young men to protect young girls so that they can continue with their education.
Ama governors wale wote wa pastoralists watenge mahali ambapo tutakuwa tukifanyia hizi tamaduni, na pia kwa bajeti zao waendelee kuweka fedha za kufanya hili kazi. Hapa tunawaambia kukeketa msichana ni jinsi mbaya sana, na leo mkiwa mmesanyana tunawaambia ni mbaya, na pia ndoa ya mapema. Kwa hivyo hiyo ndio kiini ya hii Manyata kuwa hapa.
Mosiro Manyata Chief Moses Turere say the young men are undergoing rigorous training on the importance of shunning retrogressive cultures ahead of their initiation.
Hii mambo ingekuwa imefanyika mbeleni, lakini sasa kitu yenye imefanya iletwe hapa sasa, kuna rika ilikuwa ipaswe iletwe sasa ndio ifanyike hii mwaka. Ilikuwa ifanyike kitambo, lakini juu kuna rika ingine inaongojea ndio iwekwe na ingine ndio imefanywa sasa ndio ifanywe hii mwaka tuko.
Timothy Kipnosu, Channel 1 News.
Away from that, residents of Mitunda village in Kagwe location, Lari constituency, are now appealing to the national government to consider them in the last mile electricity connection program. The residents claim their efforts through the local leaders have hit a snag. They say that their health has been compromised by the use of lanterns, tin lamps and firewood. The residents further said availability of electricity in the area will not only solve the health problems brought about by the smoke, but also will empower the locals business-wise.
Nagiza tu na hii moto hii na mshumaa na nyitera ndio tunaona naye. Kwa hivyo tuiko na shida mingi sana.
Panga kama gili 25 tukaenda kuapply kwa mtu mmoja. Saa ile tulipewa saa ile tulienda kule kuapply, tuliambiwa tugoje tutaletewa mwenye atakuja kuassess. Wanasema ni relief. Sasa alipokuja alituambia alidhani ya kwamba ni drop. Akakuja na vitu vya kuagusha stima, mawaya, akasema hatuna tegemea kupata stima rahisi, maana hatuna laini hatuna vikingi, hatuna zile waya za kupitisha mwangaza. Sasa tukaambiwa tutulie.
And a section of Kajiado County teachers are decrying what they term as a compromised quality of education in the county's far-flung public schools. Through the Kenya National Union of Teachers Rift Valley branch, the teachers claim the Ministry of Education has neglected the schools in remote parts of the country where tutors and learners encounter untold suffering. Let's take a look.
Led by the Kenya National Union of Teachers, Rift Valley National Executive Member Eli Korinko, the teachers cited poor infrastructure in the rural areas as the biggest challenge in accessing schools.
You don't know that we have inaccessible places where there is no internet and there is no network connectivity. And you want teachers to download documents and upload them.
Moreover, they say the set COVID-19 safety measures remain a pipe dream in remote areas, challenging the Ministry of Education to visit rural schools to see the real situation.
Go to the interior. You don't even know that we have institutions where our teachers cross the border of Tanzania and Kenya first, so that they go round mountains to come back to those institutions.
At the same time, the NAT members pleaded with the Teachers Service Commission to have Kajiado County considered as a hardship area to reduce the pressure on teachers deployed in the county.
DSC has started reviewing hardship areas, and Kajiado is one of them that is going to be removed from the hardship as one of the hardship areas. I want to ask you, is Kajiado a hardship area, members?
Meanwhile, Samburu County Commissioner Abdirasak Jaldesa has urged parents to ensure their children maintained high levels of discipline as part of the measures to curb cases of indiscipline in both primary and secondary schools.
Na hapa tunaelewa kwamba katika utamaduni vijana wakipitia mambo ya tohara sasa wanakuwa sasa ni watu wazima. Yangu tu ni kusema kwamba hiyo isi conflict na mambo ya masomo, kwa sababu upande ya culture unaweza kuwa sasa umeruka umekuwa mtu mzima, lakini kuna yale ambayo yanatakikana mwanafunzi yote afuate in terms of nidhamu, in front of mambo ya
Jaldesa at the same time called on chiefs to follow up and ensure all girls who are yet to report back to school due to early pregnancies resume learning until they are due for delivery.
Leo ni ile siku ya double kwenye quickbid.co.ke. Tunakupa home theater na fridge.
Kama unataka home theater ni rahisi sana. Enda kwenye lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number ekelea 4032353. 4032353. Account ekelea HT kama kodi ya home theater, fuatanisha na unique number.
Kama unataka fridge wekelea CM ndio kodi ya fridge, kisha fuatanisha na shilingi 20 peke yake. Wekelea pin yako na hivyo ndivyo utakuwa umekelea bid kwenye quickbid.co.ke. Bidhaa bora kwenye bei ya nini?
Chini kwa chini, chini kwa chini.
Jiunga na Quickbid ni rahisi. Enda kwenye M-Pesa, bonyeza paybill kisha weka business number 4032353. Kwenye account weka kodi ya bidhaa unayotaka na bid yako ya chini zaidi. Kwa mfano TV 16, kisha weka shilingi 20 tu kama idadi yako. Weka bid yako pia kwenye www.quickbid.co.ke. Kumbuka, bid ya chini zaidi ya kipekee ndio ununua. Quickbid, bidhaa bora kwa bei ya chini.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Nitakupata mahamri, wacha kahawa. Mahamri pia nitakununulia.
Tulikuwa tumesikizana bwana.
Tumesikizana kweli, lakini mpaka nione. Hizo ni habari za vifua tu hizo nazo. Mke na mume ukusaidiana. Mke na mume kusaidiana.
Wewe kama ni maji peleka ndani, watupigia kelele, peleka maji ndani.
Nini mke wangu?
Nini?
Mimi muona raha mimi anavyoimba. Unajua napenda sana ile rafiki yake anapoimba, mimi simuona raha.
Raha gani basi mzee Kikulacho? Yaani wewe una macho lakini huoni mume wangu. Akufanyia kejeli huyu.
Welcome back. Let's talk business. The United Nations Industrial Development Organization, in partnership with the government and private sector, has rolled out a 425.5 million shillings nuts, horticulture and herbs production program. The program, which will be implemented in 12 counties, will see farmers trained on crop husbandry and facilitated to market their produce.
An aroma of roasted groundnuts was from the small nut processing plant as workers are engrossed in the day's work. The small industry, owned by Gilbert Ndegwa, processes about 150 kilograms of groundnut weekly based on demand. Ndegwa says he secured $500,000 shillings bank loan in 2018 to start the factory and hopes to secure more capital to expand the facility.
Nikifanya hii kazi nipate pesa, hakuna ile kitu ambayo mimi nahitaji vingine, sababu familia sasa hiyo wamekaa vizuri, watakula, wakunywa, wasome kutokana na hii kazi. Na sasa hiyo kazi itakuwa rahisi.
Like many other nut processing plants in the country, sourcing for raw nuts has been a challenge due to low supply, which has seen processors import groundnuts from, among others, Malawi.
Jugu za hapa kwetu ni kidogo sana na watu haipendi, sababu sio kubwa, mbegu yake ni ndogo. Inatakiwa mbegu kubwa kama vile zile ziko, na iko ni kubwa kubwa. Hizi za hapa ni ndogo ndogo, za Kenya ni ndogo. Sasa hii jugu inatoka Malawi. kulingana vile tunaambiwa inatoka Malawi.
In a bid to increase nut production in the country, the 425.5 million shillings European Union-funded Market Access Upgrade Program, which is being implemented by United Nations Industrial Development Organization, the government and the private sector, is seeking to train farmers on proper nuts and horticulture husbandry to help produce high-quality nuts.
Mradi kama huyo wa markup inaweza kuwa mzuri kwa sababu wakati wanasaidia wakulima, sio wakulima peke yake. Sababu wakulima wakisaidiwa, wanaleta kwa sisi au wanaleta kwa market. Wakileta kwa market kama sisi hatuna support yoyote, hatutaweza kuwanunulia. Tena nao pia watakuwa na shida ya kupeleka, watapeleka wapi ikishakuwa.
Part of the cash should be used to facilitate farmers access market for their produce. The project seeks to increase production of snow peas, chilies, mangoes, passion fruit, macadamia, herbs and spices in 12 counties. Benson Joyoba reporting for Channel 1 Business.
The Kenya Leather Industrial Park will be underutilized if supporting infrastructure and amenities like power and roads are not done to support the development. This is according to the Kenya Leather Development Council CEO Dr. Isaac Nur, who says the 2.2 billion shillings park in Machakos County has an exporting zone license.
Workers hard at work to achieve a fast approaching deadline. This is part of a future waste recycling block in what is to become the East Africa region's first leather industrial park. Even though the World Bank estimates the value of the global leather trade to be about $150 billion, Africa, which has a fifth of the world's livestock population, accounts for a paltry 4% of the trade, while Kenya accounts as 0.14%. To increase Kenya's share of the global market, the government is rallying investors to snap up opportunities in the leather value chain.
On the other side of this development here, Kenya Leather Park, you can organize how to get land, set up, invest, become an investor, become a private investor, not foreign investor, become a private investor, and take advantage of what government has done. It will save you many millions of shillings because you don't have to replicate this. So in terms of the drylands areas, and if you look at where this is situated in Kenania, you have all this Kajiado, we all know, Kajiado and Narok is Maasai country. All this lower eastern is all Ng'ombe country, Ng'ombe, Mbuzi, Kondoo country.
Leather is wealth, leather has value, and therefore we have to create an environment by establishing this plus 3 others to begin with across the country so that our resources can now create jobs for our youth.
As construction of the 2.2 billion shillings leather industrial park in Machakos County progresses, issues are being raised about construction of key supporting amenities and horizontal infrastructure for the facility.
We are still far from where, when the park is going to be fully operational. You have come from the main road up to here. You have seen the nature of the road. It's yet to be done. You do not see small power lines you can see, but there is still no power substation for industrial use. There is still no water supply and distribution for industrial use. We are yet to have ICT infrastructure connectivity on the park. Therefore, we are still far away.
The park, on a 500-acre piece of land, is designed to be a one-stop shop for leather, leather goods and related industries, including tanneries. Alan Auko, Channel 1 Business.
The government is constructing 3 cold storage facilities in efforts to reduce post-harvest losses of potatoes and bananas. 2 potato cold storage facilities are being constructed in Meru and Nyandarua, and a similar facility for bananas is being put up in Kisii. Noting that the coal facility in Meru is 70% complete, Industry and Trade Cabinet Secretary Betty Maina said the warehouses would help reduce exploitation of farmers.
About 40% of farm produce in Kenya is lost to post-harvest losses. Among the most affected by these losses are small-scale farmers. This mostly happens during the harvest season, where prices drastically reduce due to oversupply, since most farmers do not have adequate storage facilities. To address this, the government is constructing 2 potato-rich areas and 1 to store bananas. One such facility is in Meru, which is expected to store potatoes. The cold storage facility is now 70% done.
We have grounds which can be given to entrepreneurs who want to do value addition.
Even potato peeling is a value addition. Cutting up potatoes, converting them into potato flour, potato cake. So many products are made.
Potatoes are grown on about 30,000 hectares, with the more than 4,000 small-scale farmers in Meru accounting for about half of the land under potatoes. The cold storage facility is expected to help keep the produce as farmers await better prices.
To increase the shelf life of products by more than 6 months. At least some estimates that will reach 8 months, which enables farmers to have a very sure market and a firm market for their products.
The Cabinet Secretary says a potato processing factory would be set up in Meru to add value to the produce. The county government of Meru is encouraging farmers to set up and join cooperatives to manage production and marketing of the potato.
Well, thank you so much for keeping it Channel 1. Now I move on to the interview segment, whereby we are joined by a doctor, or rather a doctorate candidate, Dr. Julian Aroa. Well, welcome, sir. I understand it's your first time here. We shall be discussing matters pertaining to non-performing loans. Well, now to kick us off, non-performing loans have doubled from an average of 4% 10 years ago to the current about 8 to 9%. This is partly due to the harsh economic factors as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, which has seen the stock of non-performing loans drastically increase. In the first half and quarter financial results released by banks in 2020. Now, to start, in your own assessment, what could be fueling the growing non-performing loans, especially by the banks?
First, thank you for having me. When we're looking at non-performing loans, there are 4 variables that cannot be looked at in isolation. Recently, we heard about the delay of our national debt payment to China to the tune of $245 million. We also now aware that non-performing loans have hit an all-time high of 1.63 trillion, I think, which is about 54.2% of the total loan book. And then the other story that is also depressing is that when you look at the Credit Reference Bureau, where we list defaulters of loans, we are told the number has hit an all-time high of 14 million. Then the question we must ask ourselves is the financial service providers, how are they performing? Using the recent data, if you look at their performance last year, of course, profitability has dropped, but within the range of 10 to 30%. Now, looked at in context with these other variables that I've mentioned, you can tell that there's a fundamental problem. So when we're talking about non-performing credit facilities, we must think about how the economy is performing, and we must also think about the prudency of our lending at the same time. So those would be my very quick thoughts on that.
Well, even though the government has been reducing domestic borrowing, banks hold the most stock of treasury bills and bonds. And county governments have been in the recent past borrowing from banks, which is crowding out the private sector. How should the country address this issue?
I think we need to get to a point where we agree on what the proportions of lending will look like. When we talk about what needs to go to the private sector, when we talk about what needs to go to the public sector, we need to find a structure that fundamentally governs that. For as long as that doesn't happen, of course, banks will go for the easier option. And if trading in bonds and treasury bills and doing business with county government, which probably guarantees repayment, if that's going to be left open-ended, then of course they'll go for the easier way. To address that or to redress that, I don't know whether it's a question of legislation or whether it's a question of supervision by the regulator, but we must get to a point where we are saying that in your lending portfolio, this is how we see it spread. And there has to be a limit and a ceiling around where you can either lend to government or you can lend to individuals or in the private sector. Until we have that semblance of order, this problem will persist.
Well, what strategies should banks employ to address the issue of non-performing loans? Do banks reduce lending or just take risk and deal with the consequences?
I think the first question that I would ask myself is our lending prudent? That would be the first question. I think about 15, 20 years ago or thereabouts, there used to be a certain element of governance that used to restrict banks in how they can give out money. For example, the debt ratio was a big aspect of this, where beyond which there was a limit that was given. I think at the time it was around 5.9 or 6.2, and anything below that, then there's a window to lend. But anything above that ceiling, then there was no window to lend. I don't know whether those regulations are still being followed to the latter. But we must also then agree that there's a new player in this particular, chasing the same piece of pie. Now, if you think about the digital online lenders, they have fundamentally changed the platform in which we do business as financial service providers. Research that was done by DLAK, which stands for Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, who commissioned a research body in Colorado, US, by the name Geopol, came to some very interesting findings sometimes in December of 2009. One, we have about 120 digital lenders in this country as at October 2019. Two, the research that they did revealed that of the 4,000 respondents to their questions or questionnaires or research, if you like, 71% had borrowed money in the last 6 months. 83% of those have borrowed again, and about 88% are happy to recommend that line of borrowing to somebody else. So what am I trying to say here to your question? What can banks do? Can they do more? First, it's to recognize that there's a new player in town, and there's a need for them to co-join at some point and start collaborating, especially in the area of information sharing. So one, prudency. Second, appreciating that we have new players in the market, and you cannot run away from that reality. For example, do we have a depository of information from all those channels that offer credit services? And here I have in mind the online lenders, the banks, SACCOs, chamas, although it's a lot more informal. And of course, we also have Shylocks, again, very informal, and you may not have it in this particular circle. And probably insurance, because I also know that insurance firms also do lending. But the question is, do we have a central database where information on credit facilitation to clients, do we have that information readily available so that when one arm of a lender wants to do lending, they are guided by information? I doubt that is there. Do you have a roundtable kind of working arrangement between the different players so that they can all see that they're working for the common good and that they must exercise some kind of self-governance, especially for the digital online lenders, working in collaboration with established banks to make sure that they do not kill the goose that lays the golden egg? I'm seeing a situation where that is being ignored, and in the long term, I don't think that it is feasible or viable for the country or even for the financial institutions themselves. Now, let's also talk about supervision. Although DLAC talks about the intentions of coming up with a forum where they can be well regulated, the question becomes, what happens until that kind of situation comes to be? Central Bank has made it very clear that digital lenders are not within their purview. So what we have is that a segment of money lenders in this country are not governed in a way that can bring accountability to what they do. So those are some of the fundamental issues that I think the financial sector needs to look into. But back to the question of the banks, it's a high time now they went back and developed products that directly responds to the devastating effects of COVID. I am yet to hear one banking institution saying or coming back and say, we have this product that we have developed, or there's this line of service that we have made available to our clients that they can draw from so that they can tackle those challenges that they're facing in these difficult times. I mean, the irony of it is, at the end of the day, you want this customer to pay you back. But if there's no facilitation for them to be able to do that, what does that mean for you in the mid and long term? For me, those are the fundamental questions.
Speaking of facilitation, do you believe consumers maybe need more loan restructuring as the non-performing loans increase in the sector despite the easing of COVID-19 restrictions?
Precisely, and that's why I'm talking about new products. So we have to become very creative at how we respond to COVID, in being sensitive to the customers that we do business with, because at the end of the day, we draw from them. So restructuring is one way of looking at it, but it must be very deliberate. For example, if somebody has a loan arrears of X amount of money and he has been listed as a bad debtor, how do you get them out of that situation? Restructuring could be one of those, but is it also true that that person may require further funding to get them out of that particular hole? That's also true, depending on what the situation is like. So it's about banks becoming less traditional in the way that they have done their business in the past, become more radical. I've used the word radical deliberately, not reckless. Become more radical in coming up with the innovative solutions to the challenges that they face today. So yes, they must restructure, but they must go beyond restructuring. Restructuring does not mean suspending interest, because that's what we saw the last 12 months or so. And then it actually accrues, and then when finally you're activating the loan again, you're asking the customer to pay what has been held in abeyance over time. I think that is not right. Banks should become real. The situation we are facing is real. I know we are resilient as a country. Our economy is fantastic. It will probably respond to this crisis in its own way. But I am persuaded that banks must be deliberate in finding a lasting solution to this problem.
Well, even as we wind up, maybe financial institutions such as banks face the greatest risk of cyber attacks. In this era where it is recommended that some employees work from home, how can financial institutions keep their systems secure?
Interesting you asked that question, because just yesterday I was having that conversation with some contacts from South Africa and some friends in a local bank. And when we talk about working from home, the question I would ask as an operational person is, what process have you developed to support that new requirement? Banks are process driven. There's clarity on where a process starts up to where it ends. But the dynamics have changed. The environment of working has changed. Now you have to work from home. That means that the process as you know it has to be shelved, and a new line of process design developed to fit with that new requirement. I've not heard, I mean, from my experience from the conversation yesterday, banks are still authorizing things past midnight because somebody has asked for this to be processed, and because they're not working within the office environment, they're forced to do it that way. What that does, it opens you to attack. So cybercrime, in my mind, will become a little bit more profound if it is not checked, but the best way to check it is to go back and look at your processes and ask the question, are they still fit for purpose? Or do we need to redesign them? So I want to agree with you. Thank you.
Well, that was Julian Roa, who is the CEO of Scheduled Business and Management Consulting. Well, thank you so much, sir, for gracing us with your presence. And now we move on to the news whereby hundreds of learners, some with disabilities in Machakos County, will benefit from an improved learning environment courtesy of a project supported by donors. The initiative aims to improve learning infrastructure, water, sanitation and hygiene for 225 hearing impaired children at the Machakos School for the Deaf and 400 early childhood development learners at Kiumbi Primary School.
Hundreds of learners from the Machakos School for the Deaf will soon have a new-look library, latrines, bathrooms, in addition to installation of a borehole water plumbing system, courtesy of an ongoing school infrastructure upgrade project funded by LG Electronics and Habitat for Humanity.
In Kiumbi Primary School, we are renovating 2 early childhood classrooms and constructing new ECD latrines as well as a kitchen block to serve the entire school. Construction began in December, and we plan to have this completed by April 2021.
Machakos County Deputy Governor, Engineer Francis Maliti, termed the initiative as transformative and assured donors of the local government support and cooperation. Machakos County has 862 public and 252 private primary schools. Machakos School for the Deaf, established in 1986, is the only school in the county catering for children with hearing impairment.
The school community will no longer have to worry about sanitation and hygiene. The students will now have access to clean, safe water once the new borehole water plumbing system is installed.
In December last year, LG Electronics and Habitat for Humanity funded construction of 2 new ECD classrooms, a kitchen block, and latrines at Kiumbi Primary School in Mavoko constituency. The school's facilities were overstretched by the growing student population. For Channel 1 News, I'm Nisi Imano Okoth.
In the sports arena, Tottenham Hotspur's manager Jose Mourinho criticized referee Andre Marine's performance after his side lost at home to Chelsea yesterday night. Meanwhile, Athletic Bilbao beat Real Betis on penalties to reach the Copa del Rey semi-finals.
In Spain, Raul Garcia scored a last-gap equalizer to force extra time, and goalkeeper Unai Simon made 2 penalty saves as Athletic Bilbao defeated Real Betis 4-1 in a penalty shootout to reach the Copa del Rey semi-finals. Garcia also scored one of the penalties after a 1-1 draw to help keep Athletic in contention for consecutive Copa titles. Later this year, they will face Real Sociedad in the postponed final from last season. The other Copa semi-finalists are Barcelona, Levante and Sevilla. The semi-finals will be played over 2 legs.
Well, that brings us to the end of our bulletin this afternoon. Thank you for keeping it Channel 1 Lunchtime News. My name is Jacky Wambiru. Our sign language interpreter has been Lucy Maura. Enjoy your weekend.
Vera Beauty College.
Vera Beauty and Fashion College, with branches in Nairobi, Eldoret, Thika and Meru. Did you know that we